My name is Dwayne. I am 32 years old, and I never thought I would see such naked greed on my sister Amanda's face as I did at our parents' funeral. The grief of losing both mom and dad in that car accident was devastating enough, but watching my own sister corner me by the caskets, demanding I sign over my inheritance because she needed it more than me, that cut deeper than I can express. I was still numb with shock when she pulled out those pre-prepared documents. But what she did not know was that our parents had anticipated everything. Before I tell you how my sister's face drained of all color when the lawyer read our parents' will, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to deal with entitled family members. I grew up in a modest two-story home in suburban Boston. Nothing fancy, but it was filled with love and life lessons that shaped who I am today. My father, Richard, worked his way up from being a construction worker to owning his own small but successful construction company. He built that business with nothing but calloused hands and unwavering determination. My mother, Alina, was a dedicated elementary school teacher who spent 30 years shaping young minds. They were hardworking, honest people who believed in earning what you have. Then there was my sister, Amanda, 4 years older than me, and seemingly born with the notion that the world owed her something. From our earliest days, the difference between us was striking. While I saved my allowance for things I wanted, Amanda spent hers immediately and then somehow convinced our parents she needed more. It wasn't that our parents didn't love us equally. I genuinely believe they did. But Amanda had a way of manipulating situations, of making herself appear needier than she was. As we entered our teen years, the gap between our approaches to life widened. I worked summer jobs, saved for college, and understood the value of independence. Amanda, by contrast, seemed to view our parents as her personal bank. When she crashed her first car 3 months after getting it, Dad bought her another one. When she dropped out of community college because it was too hard, Mom consoled her and said she would find her path. The pattern was set early. After high school, I worked my way through engineering school. It took me 6 years instead of 4 because I had to work full-time while studying, but I graduated debt-free. I remember my graduation day clearly. My parents beamed with pride, but Amanda only showed up for the celebratory dinner afterward, complaining the ceremony would have been too boring. She was 28 by then, and on her third failed attempt at starting a business, this time a boutique that closed within 8 months. I built my career as an architectural engineer from the ground up. Every promotion, every raise, came from dedication and hard work. By the time I was 30, I had established myself in my field and purchased my own small condo. Nothing extravagant, but it was mine, paid for with my own money. Amanda's path took a different turn. She married Troy when she was 27. He seemed decent enough, though somewhat passive in the face of Amanda's stronger personality. They had 2 children in quick succession, my niece Lily and nephew Jason. I adored those kids and tried to be the best uncle possible, despite the growing tension between Amanda and me. What bothered me wasn't that my parents helped Amanda financially. Family should support each other. What bothered me was her expectation of that support, her sense of entitlement to their resources. By the time I was in my late 20s, Amanda had received 3 business startup loans from our parents, none of which she repaid. She had lived rent-free in their rental property for 2 years. They had paid off her credit card debt twice. When I expressed concern to my father about this pattern during a rare heart-to-heart conversation, he sighed deeply. I still remember his words. "Your sister has always needed more help than you, Dwayne. Someday she will stand on her own feet." But that day never seemed to come. Instead, Amanda's financial irresponsibility grew worse. She and Troy bought a house they clearly could not afford in an upscale neighborhood. They took lavish vacations while behind on their mortgage. They drove new cars while asking our parents to help pay for their children's school expenses. Then our parents' health began to decline. Dad had his first heart attack when I was 29. Mom was diagnosed with early-stage Parkinson's the following year. As their needs increased, the disparity between Amanda's and my responses became impossible to ignore. I lived about 30 minutes from our family home, and I adjusted my work schedule to take Dad to his cardiac appointments and Mom to her neurologist visits. I installed grab bars in their bathroom, researched medication options, and spent countless evenings just sitting with them, knowing our time together was precious and limited. Amanda, who lived an hour away in her fancy house, rarely visited. When she did, it was usually to ask for something or to drop off the kids for our parents to watch while she and Troy went out. She showed little interest in the details of our parents' declining health, changing medications, or daily struggles. The family home itself became a point of tension. The modest two-story colonial where we grew up had appreciated significantly in value over the 35 years our parents owned it. The property, along with Dad's business and their retirement savings, represented the sum of what my parents had built over their lifetime. I never thought about it in terms of inheritance. To me, it was simply home, filled with memories and love. But I overheard Amanda on the phone once, talking to a friend about how much the house was worth and what she planned to do with her share when our parents were gone. I felt physically sick listening to her discuss our parents' assets while they were still very much alive, still sitting in their favorite chairs in the living room, still making Sunday dinners and tending the garden out back. Little did I know then how much worse things would get, or how dramatically our parents' passing would expose the true depths of my sister's entitlement. The call came on a rainy Tuesday morning. I was in a meeting with clients when my phone buzzed repeatedly. Stepping out to answer, I heard the trembling voice of our parents' neighbor, Mrs. Kaufman. There had been an accident. My parents' car had been hit head-on by a drunk driver who crossed the center line. Dad died instantly. Mom survived the initial impact, but passed away in the ambulance. The world stopped spinning. I remember sliding down the wall to the floor, unable to stand, unable to process. Both of them gone. In an instant. No chance to say goodbye, no final words, no proper ending to their story. Just sudden, brutal absence where their loving presence had always been. I called Amanda immediately. Her first question after I told her the devastating news was, "What about the will? When do we need to meet with their lawyer?" Not how it happened, not when I needed her to come help with arrangements. "The will?" I hung up, too shocked by her response to even reply. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of impossible tasks. Identifying bodies, selecting caskets, choosing burial plots, writing obituaries, contacting relatives. Each task was a fresh wound, a new acceptance that my parents were truly gone. Through it all, I functioned on autopilot, propelled forward only by the knowledge that my parents deserved a dignified farewell. Amanda arrived the day of the funeral. Not a day earlier to help with arrangements. Not even the night before to help greet family members who had traveled from out of state. She arrived 2 hours before the service, complaining about traffic and how difficult it had been to find someone to watch her dogs. Our first interaction at the funeral home set the tone. No hug, no shared grief. Instead, she looked around critically and asked, "How much did all this cost? Did you use the premium package? That seems excessive." I bit my tongue, reminding myself that people process grief differently. But as the morning progressed, it became increasingly clear that Amanda was not processing grief at all. She was calculating assets. During the visitation, while I stood receiving condolences from a lifetime of friends and family, Amanda spent most of her time on her phone. I caught snippets of her conversations. Property values, probate timelines, tax implications. At one point, I overheard her telling Troy, "The house alone should set us up nicely, and then there is Dad's business and their investments." Our Aunt Patricia approached me with concern in her eyes. "Your sister asked me how quickly estates typically settle," she whispered. "Is everything okay between you two?" I assured her it was fine, not wanting to air family discord on this of all days. But the tension was palpable. Cousins exchanged glances. Dad's business partner looked uncomfortable after his conversation with Amanda. Mom's sister held my hand a bit longer than necessary, as if trying to transfer strength. Despite it all, the service itself was beautiful. I had selected readings that captured my parents' values and outlook on life. Dad's oldest friend shared memories that made even the stoic funeral director smile. Mom's former students, now adults themselves, spoke of her lasting impact on their lives. The church was filled with flowers, photographs, and the genuine love of a community for two people who had lived with integrity and kindness. I had just finished delivering my eulogy, my voice breaking only once as I recounted how Dad taught me to throw a baseball and Mom stayed up all night helping with science fair projects, when I noticed a stranger enter and sit beside Amanda. The woman was professionally dressed, carrying a briefcase, and seemed entirely out of place among mourners. It was only during the final viewing, as people filed past the caskets to say their goodbyes, that I realized who she was. Amanda introduced her briefly as Natalie, my notary, a notary. At our parents' funeral, the pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Amanda had brought someone to notarize documents. On the day we buried our parents, I moved through the remainder of the service in a fog of disbelief. The burial, the lowering of the caskets, the final prayers all passed while I grappled with the realization of what my sister was planning. As we threw roses onto the caskets, I caught Amanda checking her watch. The moment the cemetery service concluded, before I could even thank the minister, Amanda grabbed my arm. "We need to talk," she said. "Privately. Now." Amanda led me to a small private room in the funeral home, where families typically gathered before services. The notary, Natalie, followed us, briefcase in hand. Troy trailed behind, looking uncomfortable but determined. The door had barely closed when Amanda turned to me, all pretense gone. "I need you to sign over your share of the inheritance to me," she said flatly. I stared at her, certain I had misheard. We had just put our parents in the ground. The soil was still fresh on their graves. And here was my sister, demanding my inheritance. "What are you talking about?" I managed to ask. "Look, let us be practical about this," Amanda continued, her voice taking on the condescending tone she had perfected over the years. "You have a good job. You make plenty of money. You live alone in your little condo with no real expenses. I have 2 children to support, a mortgage and school tuitions." I looked from her to Troy, waiting for some sign that this was a sick joke. Troy avoided my eyes, studying his shoes with sudden interest. "Amanda, our parents just died. We just buried them. How can you possibly be talking about this now?" She waved away my objection, as if I was being unreasonable. "Death is a part of life, Dwayne. Mom and Dad would want their assets to go where they are most needed. And right now, that is with me and my family. This is not the time or place," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We will meet with their attorney later this week." "Why wait?" Amanda pressed, gesturing to Natalie. "I have already drawn up the papers. You just need to sign. A simple transfer of rights. You sign today, and you do not have to deal with any of the probate hassle. I will handle everything." The audacity took my breath away. I looked at the notary, who had the grace to appear somewhat uncomfortable. "So this is why you brought a notary to our parents' funeral. You planned this all along." Amanda's face hardened. "I am trying to be efficient. Why drag this out? You know, Mom and Dad helped me more because I needed it. They would want this." "You have no idea what they would want," I said, my shock turning to anger. "And neither do I. That is why they left a will, Amanda. To make their wishes clear." "About that will," she said, her voice dropping. "If you do not sign these papers, I am prepared to contest it. Whatever it says." "Contest it on what grounds?" "Undue influence," she replied immediately. "You were with them more toward the end. You had their ear. Who knows what you convinced them to do?" I could not believe what I was hearing. I took care of them because they needed help and because I love them. Not to manipulate their will. Amanda took a step closer. "No one would blame me for contesting. I have children, you do not. I struggled financially, you did not. Any reasonable person would agree the bulk of the estate should come to me. Troy finally spoke up. Amanda has already talked to an attorney about contesting. It could tie everything up in court for years. Nobody wants that. I looked from one to the other. These people who were supposed to be my family, who should have been sharing my grief rather than threatening me. So this is extortion. Sign over my inheritance, or you will drag us through a legal battle. I prefer to think of it as being practical, Amanda replied coolly. Natalie has everything prepared. We just need your signature, and this can all be resolved today. The notary opened her briefcase and extracted a thick document. Amanda took it and held it out to me, producing a pen from her purse. I felt a rush of emotions, so intense I could barely identify them all. Grief for my parents, shock at my sister's behavior, anger at being ambushed, and underneath it all, a profound sadness that money could destroy whatever bond we had left. No, I said finally. Absolutely not. I will not sign anything today. We will meet with Martin Williams, Mom and Dad's attorney, as they would have wanted. End of discussion. Amanda's face flushed with anger. You always were selfish, Dwayne. Always thinking only of yourself. Those assets should go to my children's future. Those assets are not yours to demand, I replied, my own anger rising to match hers. They belong to Mom and Dad, and their wishes deserve respect. You self-righteous little, Amanda began, her voice rising. The door opened, and my best friend Jackson stepped in. One look at the scene, the notary with papers, Amanda's flushed face, Troy's uncomfortable stance, and my obvious distress told him everything he needed to know. Dwayne, people are asking for you, he said calmly. The minister wants to speak with you, and your Aunt Patricia is looking for you as well. Amanda glared at the interruption but clearly recognized she had lost this round. She gathered the papers and stuffed them back into Natalie's briefcase. This is not over, she hissed as she pushed past me. Not by a long shot. After they left, Jackson put a hand on my shoulder. You okay, man? I was not okay. Not even close. On the day I buried my parents, my only sister had tried to manipulate me out of my inheritance and threatened legal action if I refused. The family I had left was not a source of comfort in my grief, but another source of pain. I lied, straightening my tie and preparing to face the gathering of mourners who had come to honor my parents, unaware of the drama unfolding behind closed doors. 3 days after the funeral, we gathered at the offices of Williams and Associates, where Martin Williams had served as my parents' attorney for over 30 years. The office was exactly what you would expect from a long-established legal practice. Wood paneling, leather-bound law books, and an atmosphere of dignified professionalism. Amanda arrived with Troy, and surprisingly their own attorney, a sharp-featured man introduced as Gerald Hayes. She avoided eye contact with me, sitting as far away as the conference room would allow. Her body language radiated confidence and entitlement. A few other relatives were present. Aunt Patricia, Dad's younger brother Uncle Thomas, and my cousin Brian, who had been named executor of the will. Jackson had come with me for moral support, sitting quietly by my side. Martin Williams entered, carrying a thick file folder. At 70, he moved more slowly than he once had, but his mind remained razor-sharp. He had known our family since before Amanda and I were born, had helped my father set up his business, had guided my parents through every major financial decision of their adult lives. Thank you all for coming, Martin began formally. We are here to read the last will and testament of Richard and Alina Mercer. Before I begin, I want to say that your parents were among my most valued clients and dearest friends. Their loss is felt deeply by all who knew them. He opened the file and adjusted his reading glasses. This is a joint will, as Richard and Alina own most assets jointly and had identical wishes for their distribution. I glanced at Amanda, who was leaning forward slightly, her expression eager. Under the table, her fingers drummed impatiently against her thigh. Martin began reading the standard provisions. Revocation of prior wills, appointment of executors, payment of debts and taxes. Amanda shifted restlessly during these preliminaries. Then Martin paused and looked up. Before I continue with the specific bequests, Richard and Alina prepared a video statement they asked to be played at this time. He pressed a button on a remote, and a screen descended from the ceiling. My parents appeared on the screen, sitting side by side in their living room. The video had been recorded about a year ago, judging by Mom's hairstyle. My throat tightened at the sight of them, alive and well, looking directly at us. Dad spoke first. If you are watching this, then Alina and I have passed on. We want to explain our decisions regarding our estate in our own words to prevent any misunderstandings. Mom nodded. We have tried to be fair parents all our lives. We have loved both our children equally, though they have needed different kinds of support. Dad continued. Over the years, we have provided substantial financial assistance to our daughter Amanda. We have done this willingly, out of love. We have kept careful records of this assistance, which Martin has on file. My mother's gentle voice took over. These funds were given as gifts, not loans, so there is no expectation of repayment. However, these gifts total approximately $420,000 over the past 15 years. I gasped involuntarily. The amount was staggering. I had known my parents helped Amanda, but I had no idea of the extent. Our son Dwayne, Dad continued, has received considerably less financial support, approximately $22,000, primarily for education expenses. Dwayne has been financially independent since age 23 and has made us incredibly proud with his self-sufficiency. Amanda's face had gone completely still, her earlier confidence evaporating. Mom smiled on the screen. We believe strongly that parents should treat their children fairly. But fair does not always mean equal. Fair means accounting for what has already been given. Dad nodded. With that in mind, we have structured our estate to reflect the lifetime gifts already distributed. This is not about loving one child more than the other. It is about recognizing reality. The video ended, and Martin resumed reading from the will. To our daughter Amanda, he read, we leave the sum of $50,000 to be paid immediately upon the settlement of our estate. Amanda made a strangled sound. $50,000. A fraction of what she had clearly been expecting. Martin continued, unperturbed. Additionally, we establish a trust fund for the education of our grandchildren, Lily and Jason, in the amount of $100,000 each, to be administered by the executor and dispersed directly to their educational institutions. Amanda's face had drained of all color now. Her children would receive substantial educational support, but the money would never pass through her hands. To our son Dwayne, Martin read, we leave our family home and property at 247 Maple Street, valued at approximately $750,000, the remaining balance of our investment and retirement accounts, approximately $390,000, and full ownership of Mercer Construction Company, valued at approximately $1,200,000. The room was absolutely silent. Amanda looked as though she might faint or explode. I sat in shock, never having expected to receive the business. I had my own career and had never expressed interest in taking over Dad's company. As if anticipating my thoughts, Martin added, the will includes a provision that should Dwayne choose not to operate Mercer Construction personally, he may sell it as he sees fit, with the recommendation but not the requirement that long-term employees be given the opportunity to purchase it first. Martin looked up from the document. There is one final provision. Richard and Alina established a secondary trust of $200,000 for Amanda, with specific conditions. This trust will provide an annual income of approximately $10,000, but the principal cannot be accessed except in case of verified medical emergency. Should Amanda contest any portion of this will, this secondary trust will be dissolved and its assets donated to the Boston Children's Hospital. Amanda's attorney leaned over and whispered urgently in her ear. She shook her head violently, her face contorted with anger. This concludes the reading of the will, Martin said. Are there any questions? Amanda shot to her feet. This is outrageously unfair. They were manipulated. Dwayne turned them against me in their final years. Her voice rose to a near scream. I will contest this. I will fight this with everything I have. Her attorney tugged at her sleeve, trying to quiet her, but she shook him off. Martin remained calm. Mrs. Reeves, I advised your parents on this will. I can testify personally that they were of sound mind and under no undue influence. Furthermore, they anticipated your objection. He extracted another document from his file. This is a detailed accounting of every financial gift made to you since you turned 21, with dates, amounts, and purposes. Your parents maintained meticulous records. He handed copies to everyone present. As you can see, when these lifetime gifts are taken into account, the distribution is actually quite equitable. Amanda snatched the document, her eyes scanning the columns of figures. Each entry was a damning record of her financial dependence. Business startup funds, credit card debt payments, mortgage assistance, car purchases, vacation loans that were never repaid. This proves nothing, she sputtered, but her voice lacked conviction. Additionally, Martin continued, your parents had me prepare a separate document detailing the conversations where you specifically requested to be favored in their will. They noted dates and exact wording. This would be extremely damaging if you chose to claim undue influence by your brother. Troy, who had been silent until now, stood up. Amanda, enough. We need to step outside and discuss this. His face showed a mixture of embarrassment and resignation. There is nothing to discuss, she snapped. They cheated me. Martin shook his head. They did not cheat you, Mrs. Reeves. They gave you your inheritance during their lifetime, while they could see you enjoy it. Mr. Mercer will be receiving his portion now. Amanda turned to me, her eyes blazing. You did this. You poisoned them against me. Before I could respond, Uncle Thomas cleared his throat. Amanda, your parents talked to me about their estate planning 2 years ago. They were worried about your reaction, but they were determined to be fair. This was their decision, not Dwayne's. Amanda grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door, Troy trailing behind her. At the threshold, she turned back. This is not over, she declared for the second time in a week. Then she was gone, the door slamming behind her. In the silence that followed, I felt nothing but overwhelming sadness. Even in death, my parents had tried to do right by both their children. And even in death, Amanda could only think of what she believed she was owed. The next morning, I returned to the family home to begin the daunting task of sorting through my parents' belongings. Each room held memories, each object a story. I moved slowly, taking frequent breaks when grief overwhelmed me. Around noon, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Troy standing on the porch alone, looking uncomfortable. Can we talk? He asked. I hesitated, then stepped aside to let him in. We sat at the kitchen table, where I had eaten countless family meals growing up. Amanda does not know I am here, he began. After yesterday, we had the biggest fight of our marriage. I had no idea about the extent of support your parents had provided us over the years. Amanda always told me they were helping because they wanted to, because they could afford it easily. He ran a hand through his hair. The amounts on that accounting sheet. I knew about some of it, but not all. Not even close to all. What did Amanda tell you? I asked. That your parents promised her the house. That they always said the business would be sold, and the proceeds split equally. That they intended to treat you both the same in the will. He looked down at his hands. She also told me you rarely visited them, that you were too busy with your career to care for them in their final years. The lie stung more than I expected. I was here 3 or 4 times a week, I said quietly. I took them to every doctor's appointment. I installed safety equipment in their bathroom. I did their grocery shopping. Troy nodded miserably. I know that now. Your Aunt Patricia set me straight after Amanda stormed out yesterday. She showed me photos on her phone of you and your parents at Sunday dinners, holidays. Recent photos I had never seen because we were never there. We sat in silence for a moment. Amanda is meeting with another attorney today, Troy finally said. She is determined to contest the will, even though she will lose the trust if she does. She is not thinking rationally. She truly believed she would get the lion's share. He hesitated. We are in financial trouble, Dwayne. Serious trouble. The house is underwater. We have maxed out credit cards. Amanda has been counting on this inheritance to bail us out. I felt a mix of pity and frustration. Troy, contesting the will won't change anything except to reduce what she does get. Martin has documentation of everything. The will is solid. I know. I tried to tell her. But Amanda has convinced herself she is the victim here. He stood up. I just wanted you to know that I am sorry about all this. Your parents were good people. They did not deserve to have their final wishes challenged. After Troy left, I continued sorting through the house. In my father's desk, I found a sealed envelope with my name on it. Inside was a handwritten letter. Dear Dwayne, it began in my father's neat printing. If you are reading this, your mother and I are gone. There are things we wanted to tell you that seemed too difficult to say in person. I sat down, my legs suddenly weak. We have always known that our death would bring out the worst in your sister. We have tried for years to help her become more independent, more responsible, but we failed in that effort. We are sorry to leave you with this burden. The letter went on to explain their decision-making process for the will, their concern about Amanda's financial habits, and their pride in the man I had become. The house is yours because you are the one who treasured it as we did. The business is yours because the employees there are like family, and we trust you to do right by them, even if you choose to sell. We know this will cause conflict with your sister, and for that we are deeply sorry. The final paragraph brought tears to my eyes. Remember that despite her flaws, Amanda is still your sister and our daughter. We loved her fiercely, even when we worried about her choices. If there comes a time when she truly wants to change, we hope you will be there to support that change, as we tried to be. Family is complicated, but it is still family. With all our love, Dad and Mom. I folded the letter carefully and put it back in the envelope. My parents had known exactly what would happen. They had anticipated Amanda's reaction and had still made the decisions they felt were right. Their foresight was both comforting and heartbreaking. Later that evening, Amanda called. I braced myself for more accusations, but her voice was strangely subdued. My attorney says I have no case, she said without preamble. He says contesting would be a waste of money we do not have. I am sorry it came to this, Amanda. Are you? Her bitter tone returned. You got everything, Dwayne. Everything that matters. That is not true, and it is not fair. Mom and Dad helped you throughout your adult life. They gave you money whenever you asked. They supported you in ways I never needed. And now they are punishing me for it. I sighed. They are not punishing you. They are recognizing reality. They already gave you your share, Amanda. They just gave it to you early. There was a long silence. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she asked, What am I supposed to do now? For the first time since our parents died, I heard real vulnerability in my sister's voice. Not manipulation, not entitlement, but genuine fear. We will figure it out, I said. But contesting the will is not the answer. I do not have a choice, she replied, her voice hardening again. I need that money. Amanda. But she had already hung up. I sat holding the silent phone, wondering how we had come to this point, where money mattered more than honoring our parents' memory. Despite her attorney's advice, Amanda filed to contest the will the following week. Her claim alleged undue influence and questioned our parents' mental capacity in their final years. Reading the filing felt like a desecration of their memory. Every false claim about their mental state, every insinuation that I had manipulated them, was a fresh wound. Martin advised me to countersue for harassment and legal fees, explaining that taking a strong position immediately might discourage Amanda from dragging out the proceedings. Reluctantly, I agreed. The next 3 months were a blur of legal meetings, depositions, and mounting tension. The discovery process forced Amanda to disclose her true financial situation, which was even worse than Troy had suggested. They were 6 months behind on their mortgage. They had over $90,000 in credit card debt. They had taken loans from predatory lenders. They had even borrowed against their children's college funds, which were supposed to be untouchable. During Amanda's deposition, Martin methodically walked her through every financial gift our parents had given her. For each one, he asked the same questions. Did you request this money? Was it presented as a loan or a gift? Did you offer to repay it? Did you ever make any payments toward repaying it? Watching my sister squirm under this questioning gave me no pleasure. Each admission seemed to diminish her, to strip away her defenses until only the raw truth remained. She had taken and taken, always expecting more. The turning point came when Amanda's own attorney withdrew from the case. Gerald Hayes filed a motion to be removed as counsel, citing irreconcilable differences regarding case strategy. Reading between the lines, it was clear he had discovered Amanda had lied to him about key facts. Local media caught wind of the story. Daughter contests will after receiving $420,000 in lifetime gifts. The court filings were public record, and a reporter from the Boston Globe wrote a feature piece about inheritance disputes that prominently featured our case, though not by name. Still, anyone who knew our family could recognize the situation. The publicity mortified Amanda. She created multiple social media posts portraying herself as the victim, claiming I had turned our parents against her, and was now hoarding their assets while her children suffered. These desperate attempts at character assassination backfired when friends and acquaintances who knew the truth began commenting with their own observations of her behavior at the funeral and her history of financial dependence. 6 weeks into the legal proceedings, an unexpected ally emerged. Margaret Wilson, my parents' closest friend for over 30 years, came forward voluntarily to testify. She had been present for a conversation just 3 months before their deaths, when Amanda had directly asked our parents to leave her the house and the majority of their assets. According to Margaret's sworn statement, my mother had gently explained that they had already given Amanda substantial financial support over the years and wanted their estate plan to reflect that reality. Amanda had become angry, accusing them of loving me more and threatening to keep them from seeing their grandchildren if they did not change their will in her favor. Margaret's testimony was devastating to Amanda's case. Not only did it directly contradict her claim of undue influence on my part, but it established that she had attempted to exert exactly that kind of pressure herself. The judge assigned to the case, the Honorable Judith Ramirez, had a reputation for no-nonsense efficiency. After reviewing the evidence submitted by both sides, she called us into her chambers. "Mrs. Reeves," she addressed Amanda directly, "I have seen many inheritance disputes in my years on the bench. Most have at least some merit. Yours does not. The documentation provided by Mr. Williams thoroughly establishes that your parents were of sound mind, acted without undue influence, and had rational, well-documented reasons for the distribution of their assets." Amanda started to protest, but Judge Ramirez held up her hand. "I strongly advise you to withdraw your petition before I rule. A formal ruling against you will include an order to pay your brother's legal fees and may include additional sanctions for bringing a frivolous claim." 2 days later, Amanda withdrew her petition. The legal battle was over, but the damage to our relationship seemed irreparable. The final shock came a week later when Troy called to tell me he had filed for divorce. "The things I learned during this process," he said quietly. "The lies, the manipulation, the financial secrets. I cannot do it anymore, Dwayne. I stayed for the kids as long as I could, but Amanda is not the person I thought I married." I felt genuine sympathy for him. Troy had been caught in Amanda's web, just as our parents had been. "What will you do?" I asked. "Start over," he said simply. "I have a job offer in Chicago. I will fight for joint custody of the kids. I want them to know there is another way to live, with honesty and financial responsibility. After we hung up, I sat for a long time thinking about the cascading consequences of greed and entitlement. My parents were gone. My relationship with my sister was shattered. Her marriage was ending, all because money had become more important than family bonds. That night, I made a decision about how to move forward, not just for myself, but for all of us. 6 months after our parents' death, I had settled into the family home. Each room held memories, some painful, most precious. I had repainted the walls, updated some fixtures, but kept the essential character of the house intact. It was still the home where I grew up, but now it was also unquestionably mine. The hardest part of the past months had been establishing a relationship with my niece and nephew, despite the conflict with their mother. Lily was 12 now, Jason 10. Old enough to sense the tension between the adults in their lives, young enough to be confused and hurt by it. I had invited them to the house for weekend visits whenever Troy had custody. At first, they were hesitant, clearly having heard their mother's version of events. But gradually, as I showed them photo albums, told them stories about their grandparents, and simply gave them space to be kids in the home where their mother had grown up, they began to relax. "Uncle Dwayne," Lily asked one Saturday while we were making cookies using my mother's recipe, "why does Mom say you stole everything from Grandma and Grandpa?" I carefully measured vanilla extract before answering. Sometimes grown-ups see things very differently from each other. Your mom and I disagree about what your grandparents wanted. But one thing I know for sure is that they loved all of us, especially you and Jason. It was not a complete answer, but it was truthful without disparaging their mother. I had decided early on that whatever happened between Amanda and me, I would never put her children in the middle. The trust funds my parents had established for Lily and Jason's education were secure. Additionally, I had made my own decision about the secondary trust for Amanda. Despite her actions, despite the pain she had caused, I chose not to dissolve it as I legally could have done. The steady income it provided might not be enough to support her lifestyle, but it was enough to prevent true hardship. Amanda's life had changed dramatically. With the divorce proceeding and her financial situation exposed, she had been forced to sell the expensive house and move to a modest apartment. She had, for the first time in her adult life, taken a steady job as an administrative assistant at a local insurance office. It was an entry-level position, but it was honest work with a regular paycheck. We had not spoken directly since the day she withdrew her legal challenge. All communication happened through attorneys, or, regarding the children, through Troy. But about 4 months after the legal battle ended, I received a letter. "Dwayne," it began without preamble, "I am not good at apologies. I am not sure I even know how to start. But I am trying to be better, and everyone in my therapy group says acknowledging harm is the first step." Therapy group. The word stopped me cold. Amanda in therapy was something I never expected. "I was wrong," the letter continued. "About the will, about what Mom and Dad wanted about you. I was wrong about many things. I am not asking for forgiveness. I am not even asking for a relationship. I just needed to say that I know now that I was wrong." It was signed simply Amanda, with no closing endearment. But it was more self-awareness than my sister had shown in years, possibly in her entire adult life. I did not respond immediately. Trust, once shattered, could not be instantly restored. But I kept the letter, recognizing it as a possible first step toward something new between us. My own journey through grief had been complicated by the conflict with Amanda. Some days I could focus on the good memories, the love our parents had given us, the values they had tried to instill. Other days, anger and resentment clouded everything. Why had they enabled Amanda's behavior for so long? Why had they not set firmer boundaries? Why had they left me to deal with the aftermath? In my father's home office, I discovered their journals. Mom had kept one for over 40 years, Dad for nearly 30. Reading them gave me insight into their complicated feelings about both their children. They had recognized Amanda's tendencies early, but had struggled with how to address them without withdrawing their love. They had worried about me too, feared that my independence might sometimes mask loneliness. The journals revealed parents who were trying their best, who sometimes made mistakes, who loved fiercely but imperfectly. They were human, with all the complexity that entails. This realization helped me release some of my anger and embrace a more nuanced understanding of our family dynamics. 3 months after receiving Amanda's letter, I established the Richard and Alina Mercer Memorial Scholarship at the local community college. Using a portion of my inheritance, I created an endowment that would provide annual scholarships to students who demonstrated both academic potential and financial need. At the small ceremony announcing the scholarship, I spoke briefly about my parents' belief in education and hard work. Afterward, a young woman approached me, introduced herself as a former student of my mother's, and shared a story about how Mom had bought her school supplies when her family could not afford them. "She never made a big deal about it," the woman said. "She just made sure I had what I needed to succeed." That was the essence of who my parents had been. Quietly generous, focused on giving people tools rather than handouts, believing in potential. I wanted their legacy to reflect those values. A year after our parents' death, I invited Amanda to meet for coffee. It was awkward, strained, nothing like the easy sibling relationship we might have had in another lifetime. But it was a beginning. "The kids miss you," she said after we had exhausted small talk about the weather and her job. "I miss them too. Maybe they could come stay with you some weekend when I have them. If that would be okay." It was a small olive branch, but a significant one. "I would like that very much." As we parted, Amanda hesitated, then said, "Mom and Dad would be proud of what you have done with the scholarship." "It suits them." "Thank you," I replied, genuinely touched by her acknowledgement. The road ahead would not be easy. Trust would need to be rebuilt slowly, if at all. But I had learned something valuable through this painful journey. True wealth has little to do with money or property. True wealth lies in integrity, in healthy relationships, in living according to values you believe in. My parents had tried to teach us that all along. Amanda was just beginning to understand it. And I was learning to balance healthy boundaries with the possibility of reconciliation. In the end, inheritance is about more than assets. It is about the values, lessons, and examples we carry forward. My parents left me a house, a business, and financial security. But their true legacy was teaching me that how we treat others matters more than what we own. That integrity is worth more than any bank account balance. And that family bonds, though sometimes strained, are always worth the effort to preserve when possible. As I walk through the house that is now mine, I sometimes imagine my parents watching over us, hoping that we find our way back to being family again, hoping that their final wishes, both spoken and unspoken, eventually bring healing rather than division. What about you? Have you ever dealt with family conflicts over inheritance or money? How did you balance setting boundaries with maintaining family relationships? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. Sometimes sharing our stories is the first step toward healing. Thank you for listening to mine.